Or I can ask it, I seem to be having a problem with line 10.
Yeah.
Can you identify why, this piece of code isn't doing this? And it literally rewrites the code for you with the new, without the error that you've told it exists. And you paste it back into your coding software and it runs it. If it does give a load of negative information about someone, like, is that not defamation of that person's character? Like,
so whatever field you work in, I think this will have wide-reaching effects. So, on that vein, we talked like we blush over it. We think it's insane, the technology that's coming out of it, and more importantly, which we'll get into a bit later, because AI grows at an exponential rate, i.e., it'll come quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker. What is this technology look like in 2 years? It's going to be perfect.
In 10, in 20,
not even year 2, year 3, yeah, it's going to be amazing. So there are lots and lots of benefits, but there are also drawbacks to it. So we want to basically just go into and discuss them and have a longer debate on like those applications of ChatGPT type thing.
So I can start off with just some of the benefits I've had, right? Like, just something simple down to, so I'm coding all at the moment for my PhD, and just getting a simple error message that a few months ago I'd have to either figure it out for myself, go on Stack Overflow, be searching around Google to look for an answer at someone who's done a similar bit of the code. And I can literally now copy and paste the code, what I've got an issue with, into the chatbot, and just literally don't even have to ask it a question, and it will either refine it for me or say, there's problems with this code, I've now adjusted it. Or I can ask it, I seem to be having a problem with line 10. Can you identify why, this piece of code isn't doing this? And it literally rewrites the code for you with the new, without the error that you've told it exists, and you paste it back into your coding software and it runs it. I was coding hard at the time, but
I have a similar story. So I was working with a language called MySQL, which is to do with storing data in databases. If you've not used it, like relational databases, and I come from a background where I did work as a business intelligence analyst, so that's just SQL all the time, working with databases. And I had to do something where I had to filter by columns, not by rows, because normally when you search a table, you'll go, select me all the values that have a value in this column equal to 3, and you'll get like so many rows back. But I wanted to select the number of columns, right? And to do that, you have to use something called dynamic SQL, which I've never used before. I didn't even know it was a thing until I knew someone who showed me that it was a thing who used SQL for years. I just typed it into ChatGPT. I went, boom, write me an dynamic SQL script that does this. And then I just adapted what it did to use my table names and stuff and make it so it fitted my context, because it wasn't correct. It was correct in that the syntax was correct, but it was
some variable names you need to adjust.
Again, to people who don't know what syntax means, it means like the way you type out the code for a specific language. In this context, anyway. All that was right. It was just obviously the table names and what it was asking for was wrong. Changed it, worked straight away, and it genuinely would have saved me about a week.
But that's so good as well for learning, because rather than having to scour the internet, how do you code in dynamic SQL? You can literally ask for an example on ChatGPT. It will give you one, and you can even ask it, can you comment it up and explain to me what this code does? Like, what's a better teaching tool than getting a bot to show you how it's coded and explaining what every line of the code means for then you to investigate and get into it. But talking about that, lads, I asked it to create a clustering algorithm and use an example data set with the variable name, and it used the variable name that I'd asked it to use. And as you say, I just had to adjust a few things, but
just copy and paste your code in then.
Lad, but it was even using the variable name I'd asked it to use. So if you want to avoid like all the change, you can say, can you use the variable names, X, Y, Z, and it literally is.
But I think what we're highlighting here more generally is one of the huge benefits of this. Like, to support it into like a parent category is like the optimization of workflows. like, it's going to change everyone's workflow. Like, it will. There is no question on that. Like, you can now use this to change parts of your day which are so tedious. It takes up like days at a time. You can just ask this to do it for you. So like, there's an example online. This is a really popular example. So it was a guy, and he had one of his clients was I think it was gardening. He did, but his literacy was poor, like dead poor. So he'd lose clients because like his emails would be like, "Hi, work start next week." Like, it's not English. Like, genuinely, it's not English. Yeah, like, no, I mean, totally. The words are English, but like, it was poor literacy. Yeah. So what he did instead is he coded up an application where the guy typed what he was going to say in his like what he could type
in ChatGPT.
Yeah, and then ChatGPT would automatically create an email. So he'd type in work start next week. I come round. Thanks.
Yeah.
And then the email would be like, "Hi, customer. Really looking forward to starting to work with you." Flesh out a full coherent email, which would then automatically send, because the guy wasn't tech illiterate, obviously, and it'd automatically send to the customers.
That's nuts, man.
So it literally improved that guy's business straight away.
Well, it stopped him having to worry about his emails and now he looks professional. But I've seen loads of examples. I've seen people who sell products on like Amazon or like, online sellers. They might be selling shoes, perfume, whatever. And the amount of time that it took them to write up a bio for a product or to advertise that product. And now, like, there was one girl on Twitter who was seeing, who was getting ChatGPT to write up product descriptions, saying like, "Can you explain
XYZ product,
this light bulb?" And because the light bulbs existed for the last 10 years, ChatGPT, this light bulb has a blah blah blah. It lasts for this long, and she was just inserting those and all those like
insane, isn't it?
All those boring admin tasks that you don't want to have to do. And like, she just avoided completely. And like, she was saying what used to take her 5 hours to list maybe 20 products, was taking her an hour. Yeah, because it was as quick as getting ChatGPT. So they're like some of the main benefits. Like, the big one we're getting at is just how it can streamline your workflow,
and also how conversational it is. Like, it's not like when you speak to it, you just get.
It's not like you're getting a robot, is it?
No, you're getting a conversational answer, which you can then ask further questions on about what it's returned.
Yeah,
and it's very easy to work with. However, so that's like the main drawback. And at the minute, it's free, but it's going to cost money. Yeah, so the main benefit. But then getting into the drawbacks of this technique, which is where I have to hold myself back, because sometimes I get very guilty of like, that's fucking class.
Yeah, like running. Yeah,
that is amazing.
No, I have noticed this with Ryan. If it's like ML or AI based and it's like new, he loves to champion it, and he's the main cheerleader for anything like this.
But also, you've got to remember, it's a multi-billion-dollar company. To make it, they're out to be.
I didn't know if when they first opened, it was all open source and non-profit organisation. When openai first, because it was started with Elon Musk.
He was a partner, wasn't he?
And it was non-profit, and the last few years
they've
Elon
changed
left,
it, haven't they?
And they've changed it to
But so there are obviously drawbacks with that, like they're going to do things for profit. So again, a drawback: it's free at the minute. Definitely not going to stay free. I think it probably shouldn't stay free, but it shouldn't be expensive. I mean, well, there's a minefield in itself. Should it stay free? Should it not stay free? But anyway, the drawback is it's not going to. And we've just seen an example of it. Then they've already, like, this is new to us.
Shit,
yeah. So we just googled it then, because we were going to ask it to write a poem about me and Sam drinking beer in here.
I'm going to ask it to write a song.
Yeah.
Have another attempt at that hit maker. No, but when Ryan went on it, it was asking for money. It was saying if because of the high traffic at the moment, we're going off subscription base for £20 a month.
Yeah, so what you find is, like what I said earlier, like, use it at not peak time. Like, when you go on to use it at these times, you can't get on. And basically, you could see you can use ChatGPT Plus, where you pay £20 a month and you get priority access and stuff. Yeah. So these paid tiers are coming in, whether you like it or not. And these people now who've become so dependent on it business wise because they adopted it early.
Oh, they're gonna...
Like, it's the shortest application ever to get to 1 million users.
Lads, I've seen that. It was comparing it to like Tumblr, Instagram.
No, what was it? TikTok took 9 months to get to get to
that
a
was
million
only recently as well,
users.
Wasn't it? Last few years.
ChatGPT took 2 months.
Now,
if it was that, I think it was.
And now that you've mentioned it, lad, you've just said that, all them people, and those examples of given, like people, you know, online sellers, bloggers, you know, whatever it may be, the application you were using, you've had it free for 2 months. And obviously it's only subscription at high traffic
For
times
now.
at the moment. But say in a month's time, if it does go subscription based, they've already got you. Because they know that you want their bot, man, for the speed. So that's, you know, that's a big drawback. Is all of a sudden you're getting 20, 30, a £10 subscription base on you to speed. Now, it might be worth it for you in your business. But
eventually, I don't think they're doing that. I think they're doing a cost per pull. So a cost per query.
Like, query, yeah.
So a cost per search. And if that comes into the equation, they could go through the roof. You never know.
You're using it 1,000 times a day. Even £1 is £1,000.
That's what, even at 10p, £100 a day on a business.
Oh, that's nuts.
And when you think about it, say for example, Google at the minute has 8 billion searches a day.
So if it got to that level, well, yeah.
if they charged a penny per search,
yeah.
I mean, they'd be making £8 billion a day.
That gets into the ethics of it, which we're going to get to, doesn't it?
Another benefit, another drawback is, so again, whilst I've been a champion of its ability to come out and tell you all these wonderful things, it is also really happy to tell you these wonderful things, even if they're not technically right.
Yeah, it proper stands with its shoulders broad, claiming the truth, man, claiming gospel. And if you aren't sharp enough and you don't take a bit of precaution using it, you will just copy and paste it and copy and paste BS pretty much, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because I've seen it where I can ask it stuff and I know what it's told me is not right.
And that's, as you say, because it's been trained on Reddit columns, been trained on...
Well, it's just been trained on everything, and it's just, if it's not seen that particular thing before, it can be incorrect.
Yeah.
Like, I saw an example where it said a kilogram of something was heavier than a kilogram of something else.
Yeah, so that's bollocks, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
So you do need to, like...
Stuff. It's good for us, because we're using it very specifically on the... I mean, I use it for fun for a lot of things, but... because that's how I spend my evenings.
Because after 6 p.m, that's what I do.
When I clock off, I roll my sleeves up and load of a ChatGPT. Yeah. But when I'm using it, like
using it temperamentally,
and I use it like in an area which I believe I'm quite well versed in.
Yeah.
So like when I've used it to help potentially like to narrow down search options for something, say if I'm writing something up, I'm like, can you just summarize this so I know where to go and look?
And you know if it's wrong.
I know straight away, kind of, so I used it for some hyperparameter tuning when I was typing up about them. I kind of knew how they work. I couldn't really be asked on search for the references.
That's the same thing. I used it like that.
One of the searches that came through, sorry to jump in, I knew straight away. I was like, that's weird. Regenerated it and I was like, that seems more sensible. I can verify that and back that up.
Well, I had problems with it, so very similar thing. I was writing up a report and I was looking over the topic of chronic illnesses, and I just got it to summarise what one of these illnesses was, and it put some references in the text for me. And when I had a look at that reference, the reference didn't really say what it was referencing. It did loosely, but if you'd have used that in your report, you might, if someone checked that reference, they'd be you've stretched the truth a bit there. So obviously it's pulling from information and not telling you exactly where it's got everything from.
And again, that leans into another one of its drawbacks again. So it's like, there are lots and lots of drawbacks to this, which on the surface, when you just look at what it can do, which is what I alluded to before, I got very sucked in with it. You start peeling it back, there's a lot of drawbacks to it. Another one, it doesn't live search from the internet. Yeah. So everything so all the data it was trained on and developed with was up to 2021, I believe. I'm not sure when, but 2021. So it can't get fresh information from the internet, and recent stuff it doesn't know at all.
Is that coming now? Is internet?
It will be.
Yeah.
It will be, aye.
So, for example, if you wanted to know about the Ukraine war, or you're knackered because it started...
Basically, but then it might give false information about that because it doesn't know. So there's another drawback of it. Which
or
potentially
it might pull to an older Ukraine war.
Yeah,
like Crimea or something, and then people might take that as, that's gospel about 2022. And so there's low... That's one of the issues as well, is the it was trained on data, before
and then
2022.
one of the biggest ones, I suppose, is how it handles political and the biases it will inevitably have from a human trained piece of software.
This leans into the ethics, which you also which I suppose is we can get onto is me and Ryan. When we were looking at ChatGPT, was like, okay, how do we approach this topic? And
because it is sensitive.
It's sensitive, and there's a lot of examples online where, and even me and Ryan were testing it ourselves. We got some problems with it. But for example, if you ask it to write a poem about one political candidate and then write an exact same poem about another political candidate, not naming names, but it pretty much creates two different poems based on a public narrative that may be true or may not be true, but I'm not sure that was the intended use of the AI bot.
Because basically they put stops in place to stop this hurtful comment and stop it giving out dangerous information. But with it being such an open-ended technology, i.e. you can type in what you want. Yeah. You can't account for every...
That's it, innit?
So like someone asked, for example... it's not funny. It's kind of funny, but it's not funny. Someone asked for a cooking recipe to build a Molotov cocktail.
And it worked! Someone... It's mad.
And it's not funny. It's not funny. It's terrible. But like, it's also quite funny.
But then who decides what... That's the whole ethical conundrum in it. Is like, who decides what it can say and what it can't say?
No, of course.
And even like going back to the political side of things, where people are asking it questions about different political candidates from different countries, if it does give a load of negative information about someone, like, is that not defamation of that person's character? Like, where's it got the info from? Obviously, it's got it from trained data.
Unless you can prove actual sources.
Well, you can't prove exactly. So like,
eventually, it will pull from the internet.
But that's one of you cannot have a chatbot given a real negative aspect of someone and a real positive aspect of someone else when they may be both going up for political candidacy in an area.
Yeah,
it's so biased. Maybe if it's a historical figure who we know has been bad or good, and like their history is well cemented.
But like, are you talking about like current,
like in a current time? If two candidates were going.
Well, no, but we see that anyway at the minute whereby
the media,
like not even that, just like stuff on Twitter, like people stormed, say, the Capitol building in America over people spreading what they wanted about one particular.
No, totally. If it does give a load of negative information about someone, like, is that not defamation of that person's character? Like
a piece of tech that can scour the internet and basically come out with these conversational...
And that's, I suppose, like... Obviously, this technology is going to get better and better, but it is putting a lot of... If this company is the only... Sort of like Google was an early search engine, but they are pretty much nowadays... the only search engine.
90% market
share. There's other ones out there. So say if OpenAI, they've started off as one of they're not the first chatbot, but one of the most usable and user-friendly chatbots.
What their one does is different to...
Exactly. So my point is, if they, monopolised and ended up being the Google equivalent in 10 years' time, there's a lot of power then in that company's hands, and they've got a lot of responsibility, like Twitter and Facebook do, to navigate a social landscape and a social rubric to ensure that people are given a fair bite of the cherry with information.
Like, as we've said, like, there was an example we saw and we tested it ourselves just to double check, where it was people had asked it what makes a good engineer.
Oh, yeah.
Write a piece of code that based on someone's race and gender determines if it's a good... it will be a good engineer. And it came out with, like, what was it? If white and if male,
if
then
white
good.
And if
then good. If not, then.
And obviously it's probably pulling from.
But no, to be fair, we tested that a few times and it did come out with different combinations.
But that's worrying
because it's random. But I suppose the root problem there is no race and no gender combination is specific. Like, they're not correlated to. Well, they're definitely not correlated to whether someone's going to make a good engineer. The question should have been, are you interested in engineering? Yeah. If yes, then you can try to be good engineering. If not, probably not.
Maybe it's pulling from data of, as of 2021, what's the largest demographic of engineers.
But it could just be anything.
Exactly,
and then you've got the biases of what people put into it. Like, there's countless examples of machine learning where biases get run rampant. So
like the Google problem with the image recognition.
Then you had what the American police were using. There's been loads of examples with dermatology where all the skin conditions were on white skin, not dark or black skin. There's loads of these examples. And do I think ChatGPT is immune from these examples? No.
and that's going back to, OpenAI having that power.
They will not be.
It's almost an unbearable responsibility to.
Of course it is, because then how do you hire enough people to have enough input in the model to have no biases?
Exactly. Or how do you vet out? So the more
people who
you
have
get,
biases,
the more people you get, the more unbiased you could say the model becomes. But then the more people you get, the more chance you've got to recruit
it's
people
an unfortunate
with nefarious intention.
It's an unfortunate truth that horrible people exist.
Yeah,
so the more people you hire, the probability you hire a horrible person,
someone with a nefarious intention,
it also increases because, as you say, these systems people put in place to stop horrible people getting hired obviously don't work.
And then,
do you know what I mean?
And then, so what we're talking about then, like the political problem where, that's just one example, but you were saying media's always done that, and Twitter's always done that. But there's also the problem, which I've heard people talking about, of like deep fakes and like people pretending to be experts. And then if you're an expert in a topic,
that's another ethical
problem.
We've talked at length about this one.
And I get it, like if you're an expert in machine learning or, I don't know, cancer treatments, if someone tries to pretend they're an expert in person, you quickly be able to riddle that they are not an expert. Yeah. But behind the facade of social media, so for example, in a pandemic,
anyone can be anyone.
When you're trying to get the best information from the correct Twitter accounts or the correct social media accounts, 5 years ago, only experts really who were well versed on literature, who had access to academic databases could perpetuate information which made sense. But as you've seen, as social media sort of grew, people are getting more and more access to info who aren't necessarily experts. And listen, everyone's entitled to an opinion. But what happens when people are pretending in the next pandemic or the next big global issue to be an expert on it because they've got ChatGPT helping them, a future version of it, and perpetuating stuff which could be true or not, because we know ChatGPT sometimes makes a mistake.
The problem with this specific issue is that this is an issue that already exists and hasn't had a solution to it. Like, you can't.
Definitely not.
The people, like these social media companies, still haven't been able to stop fake and false news being perpetuated. So how, as you say, imagine if someone then someone with a couple of grand decides to just pay for ChatGPT and loads of bots to spam out Twitter accounts saying the same type of stuff.
Even creating new people or pretending to be.
So then the thing is, so you have the onus that's always been on social media. Then you have the onus on OpenAI to stop this type of fake news. But then it's
an unbearable responsibility.
Of course it is. It's insane.
I almost feel sorry for them, and that they've got that responsibility to now dictate what is allowed and what isn't allowed, because you're always going to have throwback.
No matter where you put the threshold. Like, there's a very obvious place to put the threshold. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's obvious. You kick out the racists. You kick out all the terrible people.
But as you say, there's places that aren't. There's areas that aren't that easy to.
And then as you say, as you start moving the threshold, it's like, where do you put it? And you're always going to annoy other people.
You're always going to have a group
it is
people,
hard.
And so that's some of the ethical drawbacks that we think are important to mention.